All right. So welcome everybody. Today we are going to be talking about multi-level classes. And there we go. And so when we talk about multi-level classes, we mean classes in which not all the students are exactly the same level. And if you look at this illustration here, you can see these are the different levels of English language proficiency according to the CEFR, which are the standards we use for the Light of the World materials. It's the Council of Europe standards for languages. So there's A1, which is an absolute beginner, just learning the language. And then it progresses up through A2 all the way to C2, which is proficient, which would be the equivalent of a native speaker. And ideally, we would love to have students who are all in the same group in one class. So if we're doing A1 beginners, we would love everybody to be an A1 beginner at the same level. However, that in real life, that rarely happens. We generally tend to have mixed classes where some students are a little higher, some students are a little lower. And as an instructor, we need to adapt our lessons so that the higher level students don't get bored and the lower level students don't get overwhelmed. Even if you are working one-on-one and you only have one student at a time, you will find that often the students have different levels in different areas. So they might be a beginner when it comes to writing, but they might be intermediate when it comes to speaking. So even within one student, we can have multi-levels. And so these techniques we're going to be talking about today are going to help you if you're doing multi-level classes, or even if you're using the Light of the World materials with one student who may be a little higher or lower in some areas. So the 4 areas we usually talk about are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And students can be at different levels in those different areas. I have a lot of experience with multi-level classes because for about 20 years, I taught workplace ESL, and I would teach in manufacturing companies often. And the students were divided not by their level of English proficiency, but just by the shift that they worked at, the time of day that they worked. So everyone who worked during the day was in one class, and everybody who worked at night was in a different class. And because we didn't have enough resources to have individual classes for every single one, the groups were pretty mixed. So I got used to adapting my lessons for all of these different levels. So one thing to remember about multi-level classes is that all classes really are multi-level classes. Even if you do a placement test and you place students who have the exact same score in a class, within a few weeks, one of the students is going to be learning a little bit faster and become more advanced, and the other students are probably going to be a little bit lower than that one. So throughout the term that we're teaching, the gaps can sometimes get wider between the students. And so it's important to know different adaptations we can do. And there's 2 basic ways we can deal with this in terms of putting students together or separating them. One is to divide the class into different groups. So if you have enough teachers and enough rooms, you can have a beginner group in one room and the advanced group in a different room, and you'll have different teachers working with those groups, right? If you don't have enough teachers or space or resources, then you might, within one classroom, just kind of push the higher level students over on this side of the class and push the lower level students over on the other side of the class. And the lower levels can be doing an easier task with one teacher, and the higher levels could be doing a different task, either independently or hopefully with the help of an assistant teacher. And you'll know, I always recommend that you team teach. You should always have at least 2 teachers if you're doing a class. And that makes it easy to break it up into 2 smaller groups. It's also easier to do this with a class size that is small. So if you have 10 students and you can break them up and have like 5 in doing one task and 5 doing another task, it's easier than if you have 30 or 40 students in your class and trying to manage that. So we always recommend smaller class sizes when possible. Another technique we can do instead of dividing the students is pairing them. So you can pair a lower level student with a higher level student to help them. Or you can kind of recruit your higher level students to be assistant teachers. Now, one thing is not everyone is good at that. So some of the higher level students may not be very patient with the lower levels. So you want to try it out sometimes, see how good they are at it. But also, the higher level students can feel resentful because they may feel like, well, I signed up for this class because I want to learn English, and now all I'm doing is helping the lower level students. I'm not really learning anything. So depending on the attitude and the goals of that student, you might want to do that sometimes, but I don't recommend doing that all the times, pairing the higher and lower students, because it can get boring for the higher level students. The other techniques we're going to be looking at, these final 2, are giving more complex tasks to the higher level students to do at the same time, and giving simpler tasks to the lower level students to do. And I'm going to show you some examples of what those look like, and then I'll open it up for questions that you may have. Okay, so, oops, let's go back. Okay, so if you're using the Light of the World materials, you may know that we always start out with a theme picture. Sorry, my screen is jumping around. And so with our theme picture, we show the students a picture and we ask them questions about it to see what things they already know. So in this picture, you can see there is a person who's typing on a computer and they're writing with a pen in a notebook. And so for a very low-level beginner student, if they're not able to produce any language at all, if you ask them, what do you see in this picture? And then just get blank stares, like nothing. You can start out by naming the objects and saying, you know, this is a pen, this is a computer, and then ask them, where is the pen? And they can point to it or circle it in their book. So at the very low level, we're not even asking them to produce language. They're just receiving language and pointing to indicate understanding. So where is the pen? That could be one of the most basic things if they don't feel comfortable saying any words in English, but they can just point. The next level up from that, you can point as the teacher and say, is this a pen? And then they either say yes or no. Okay, so they're producing language, but it's very simple language. It's just the words yes and no. If you bring it up a level further than that, you can give them choices and you can say, is this a pen or paper? And then they have to say the word pen. Further up, you can say, what do you see? And they can say pen, paper, computer. Okay, so that's a little bit higher. You can ask them to label all the items in this picture. So write the words for everything you see in this picture. So this is engaging their writing skills. So this can be good for folks who they can already say the words, but you want them to get a little more practice writing. So they can, if they have the printouts, they can write on them, or they can write on the board if you're projecting it onto a whiteboard, for example, or if you're using a Zoom screen, they can annotate on their Zoom screen and write on the picture online. Going up another level, you could say, what is a pen used for? And they could say a pen is for writing. So it's a short answer, a little bit more advanced. What will happen next? They might say, well, the woman in this picture will finish studying and then she will go to class. It's always nice if we can engage students by personalizing the questions. So you could ask, do you prefer to write with a pen, a pencil, or a computer? And why? Okay, and then they have to give a longer answer. So for students, they're engaging their thinking skills, they have to come up with more vocabulary and say, well, I prefer a pencil because I can erase my mistakes. If the even more advanced students, you could say, research and write a page about the invention and evolution of the ballpoint pen. And so they would have to do some internet research, find out who invented the ballpoint pen, how long it's been around, and what have been the innovations in that, and then they can write about it. Or you could say, with a partner, create and deliver a marketing presentation to sell pens. Okay, so they could work together, create a little PowerPoint, or just jot down some notes and then do a presentation for the class where they sell a pen and talk about all the wonderful features their pen has and why you should buy it. Okay, so those are some ways we can make the exercise easier for the very lower students and make it more complex for the higher level students. Any questions about this? All right.
No questions.
Okay. Then I'm going to go on to the next one. Now, adapting materials for the Bible reading. Each lesson contains a Bible reading. And the very basic thing we ask them to do is read the story in their own language and then listen to the story in English while we look at the pictures. We can add on to that for students who are a little higher level. They can read the story in English or repeat after us in English to practice pronouncing some of those words. After the Bible story, we always have 3 types of questions. And so the most simple questions are observation questions. So if we're learning about the flood, we could ask, who built the ark? Or how many days did it rain? So those are questions that are very simple to go back to the story and find the answers. They're just basic comprehension questions to see if they're understanding the story. The next level of questions is a little bit more complex. This is interpretation. Why did God save Noah's family? So they need to think about that. The answer may not be directly in the story, but based on what they've read in the story, they can make some, have some opinions about that, about why God saved Noah's family. And then application is the third type of question. These are the same questions we use in our inductive Bible studies. The application question is when you apply it to yourself in your own life. So it could be a simple thing like, what do you think of when you see a rainbow? Maybe they'll say, I think of God's promises. I think of the beauty of it. Do you obey God like Noah? How? And give some examples of where maybe you've obeyed God when he asked you to do something crazy, like Noah, he asked Noah to do. So those are application questions. And so your beginning students may be able to, maybe they can just listen and understand it a little bit because they already heard the story in their own language and they're listening in English. Maybe they can read it a little bit. Maybe they can answer these questions depending on their level. A fun thing to do is to remove all the words from the story. So you can just delete those words out of the PowerPoint or cover them with I'll cover them with a white shape. So if you just go to your menu and click on shapes and make just a white box, you can cover the words with that. And then, so for students who have a little more verbal skills, you can have them just look at the pictures and tell the whole story in their own words without reading it. Another thing you could do for students who are a little more advanced. So the rest of this class is just struggling to understand the story, but your advanced students are getting a little bit bored with this. You can have them circle all of the past tense verbs in the story and write the present tense above them. So where it, where it says ran, they have to circle that word ran and above it write run, which is the present tense of ran. And in the appendix of each lesson, there's an irregular verb chart, but that's an important skill. They need to learn all of those irregular verbs. Another thing you could have them do is circle the words you don't know and translate them using a bilingual dictionary or Google Translate. A little more challenging than that is circle the words you don't know and look up the definitions in an English learner's dictionary. And so that's a really great skill we encourage for students who are able to do that. You can also have them do some writing. So which character in this story is most like you and why? So they can write a paragraph about that. or have them write about what is God teaching you through this story. So those are some options. It's always nice to give the more advanced students opportunities to write, especially to write on something that's meaningful and personalized to them. So connecting their own lives to the material. Any questions on this for the Bible stories? And I thank you. It looks like Herman and Moses have joined us. Welcome, Brother Herman and Brother Moses. Good to see you guys.
I don't have any questions, Melina, but these are fabulous. These are fabulous ways to really engage someone. I particularly like the telling the story in their own words.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrific. Yeah, so really good. And,
yeah. And that's a lot of fun. And you can do that with the group too. You know, they can be looking at this picture we have here of the Noah and the ark, and they can say, oh, you know, one person might say, God sent the animals to Noah. And then somebody else might be able to say, you know, I see birds, or, you know, the animals came in 2 by 2 in pairs. So everybody can kind of add something to their knowledge of the story and continue to tell it in their own words with the picture prompts.
Yep, that's great.
Okay, so here is how to adapt the light of the world conversations. So in every lesson, we have 1 or 2 conversations. And at the most basic level, we'll have the students listen and repeat the conversation as it's written. And so we usually will have one person is A, the other person is B, and they go ahead and just read this exactly as it's written. If you want to make it a little more challenging, number 2, act out the conversation with gestures and emotions, right? So you can have the students come up to the beginning, to the front of the class, and one is the child and one is the mother, right? So maybe one like gets down on his knees to be shorter as the child. And then, you know, Mom, may I go out to play today? You know, and really ham it up, put some fun into it, and do the actions. The third level would be to replace the blue words with your own words. So instead of saying, Mom, may I go out to play? May I go to play outside? It might be, you know, using your name. Melina, may I go play outside? And instead of saying it's cool and snowy, we could use the actual weather that we're having outside, or we could use the second picture in here where you see, they could say it's hot and sunny. What are you going to wear? I'm going to wear a t-shirt and shorts, right? So this gives them a chance to improvise. And that's what they'll be able to do at a little bit higher level. And then number 4, continue the conversation beyond what is written. So maybe have them write a couple of more lines to this conversation. So after, don't worry, I'll be careful. You know, maybe the mother says, and be sure you're back for dinner at 6 o'clock, or whatever it is. They can be creative and just come up with some more lines to the conversation. And this can be a lot of fun. Okay, any questions about this one? Then the next one, adapting materials, is the listening exercise. So every lesson has a listening exercise where they listen and write the words that they hear. And if you want to make this simpler, for number 1, I've got down here in the level of complexity, To make it very simple, the teacher could fill in the first letter of each blank. So you are invited to my blank. I could put in the letter P there because the word is supposed to be party. You are invited to my party. And sometimes seeing the first letter of that word is going to help the beginning students to know which word to write in the blanks. Another thing you could do is to remove the extra words to make it easier. So you can see there are 9 blanks in this exercise, but there are 12 words to choose from. So you could remove those 3 distractor words, the wrong answers, and only leave the right answers. That makes it a little easier for them to choose the right ones. The next level up would just be doing it exactly as it's written. So number 1 and 2 will make it easier. Number 3 is just doing it as it's written. Number 4, if you want to make it a little harder and more challenging, remove the word bank. So just cover up all of those words that are in the blue boxes. And so they just have to listen and write the words without seeing them. That makes it a lot more challenging. Another level up is you could add more blanks. So instead of having 9 missing words, go ahead and take out another 5 words, 5 of the more challenging words, and put blanks in there. So now they have to find even more words as they're listening. And to make it really challenging, if you have students who are very good, you don't show them the black words at all. Just have them listen to what you're saying and write it all down on a blank piece of paper. Okay. So those are some levels of what you can do with the listening materials. And by the way, this presentation is included in the link that I sent you with the webinar invitation. So you'll be able to access these suggestions. Okay. Any questions on listening? Another thing you could do to make the listening exercise a little easier is just to read very slowly and just do one line at a time instead of the whole paragraph. So just first do line 1. You are invited to my party. You are invited to my party. You are invited to my party. And then once you see that they've all got that, then you can go on to the next sentence. My roommate, Adam, and etc. Okay. And the last thing I wanted to show you here is this is Bloom's taxonomy. This is kind of a pyramid showing you the order of difficulty of thinking skills that we can ask students to do. So at the bottom of the pyramid here is remember. So with our ESL students, remember is just, we show them a pen and we say, this is a pen. And then later when we show it to them again, we say, what is this? If they can remember, this is a pen. That is the most basic thing that they'll be able to do. A little bit higher than that is understanding, where they can explain it and say a pen is used for writing. Applying is the next level up. So using the information in new situations, like we did with the conversation. So you have a conversation about cold weather, and then you can apply it in your own situation. Maybe you have hot weather. You can use some of those same structures, but you're improvising the words and applying it to your own situation. Analyzing is when you're drawing connections among different ideas. And so when you're talking about Bible stories, we'll often get into analyzing it. You know, why did this happen? Or what was the result of that happening? So they're analyzing. And then evaluating is great to do. You can get higher level students into debates where they debate the merits of writing on a computer versus writing by hand. And they need to argue and defend and support their ideas, either in writing or in speaking. And then the pinnacle is to create, right? So to produce a new or original work, taking what they've learned and writing about it or speaking about it in a new way. And so for very elementary students, they may not be able to do create yet, but we kind of try to push students up the pyramid according to their abilities. And so this Bloom's taxonomy is another way of thinking about the complexity of the learning. All right. So that is all that I had to present today, but I'm going to open it up to you guys if you have any more questions about your specific classes or anything I can clarify for you.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a question. I didn't follow the previous classes, but what I would like to know is when talking about every class is a multi-level class. This means that in one class, we can have both the beginners and the intermediate. Is that what you were saying?
Yes. Or at least you may have some beginners that are higher than other beginners. So you may have they may all be beginners, but some of them will be stronger beginners and some of them will be lower beginners, right? Ideally, we would like to have people, you know, all beginners in one class and not have the intermediate or advanced students in the same class.
Good.
But we often see in our classes that like parents and children might come to the class together and be at different levels. Or people who share transportation, they might ride together to class. And so they have to come together, even though one is higher and one is lower. So sometimes we have families and we will have people of very different levels in the class. But ideally, we want to, as much as possible, keep them in the same group. But that's a great question. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tanya.
Okay, so yes, with students, yes, they like with my student, I think his reading and writing is probably higher than his listening and speaking. And so this will really help out a lot on that. I guess one of the questions too is like with that kind of ability at this point, when do and we've only been through 2 lessons. I went ahead and started him on lesson 1 at the very beginning, and he was happy with that. So when do I possibly skip some lessons to see how he does going above, or what would you recommend?
Yeah. So, you know, you can ask your students. Generally, I find most students feel more comfortable working at a lower level. And sometimes the teacher needs to push them into a higher level. I often see students, they would rather be at the top of the beginning class than at the bottom of the intermediate class. So they'll stay in the beginners even though they're ready to go to intermediate. So what you might do, Tanya, is go ahead and jump to a higher level lesson and see how he does with that. You know, if he says, oh, this is good, and he's able to keep up, or if he's like, no, 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 this is too much, then you can go back. When you're just tutoring one student at a time, you've got a lot more flexibility to do that than with a whole class. So yeah, I might recommend, you know, jumping up a few lessons, maybe to one of the middle lessons, and see how he does.
Yeah, I can do that too. I've only had 2, so it's like, oh. And I always ask him, is this easy, hard, or just kind of like this, you know, to find out where he's at. But I like all these ideas too. These will be very helpful with the session. So
Yeah.
And you said the lessons usually can take an hour and a half to 2 hours, right?
Yeah. So if you're just doing, it depends on a number of factors, but if you're working individually with a student, it usually takes about an hour and a half or an hour.
Okay.
If you're working with a group, it takes longer because you need to give everybody a chance to participate. So it's going to take longer to do that.
Okay, great. I didn't know if we were an hour and a half, and it's
You
like,
were an hour and a half. Yeah, that's
am I
fine.
rushing it too much? But it seemed like we were pretty thorough. So, okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Well, I'm going to stop recording and we will have a different topic next week. So I hope